This is exactly how I increased my profitability from $165,000 per build to $280,000 per build. Now, while most people think that inflation is a bad thing because of domestic goods and services, it actually turns out to be a very promising thing if you're a contractor. Now, I don't make the prices, I just reinforce them by building a product that is already proven in the area. So banks need to have proof of concept. So one thing that most people don't realize is that housing is just like everything else. It's all based on supply and demand. Now, if the supply is not there, the demand definitely is. And right now, because there's over 7.1 million homes in deficit in the United States alone, one of the biggest things that you have to realize is that there is more of an issue with the availability of new homes being constructed than there is with the lack of eggs and commodities and groceries and automobiles and everything else that's in the market. During the pandemic, what ended up happening is goods went up by 12%. And so when goods went up by 12%, we ended up having to reinforce those same prices into the finished product of our construction. Now, the end user is the one that lands up paying those increased costs. Most builders, most developers sit back and go, oh my goodness, I can't afford to build. The cost to build is too high. Wrong. We went from making just over $160,000 in profitability on every single build to making over $280,000 in profit on every single build. And it was all because of what happened during the pandemic. Historically, before we actually hit the pandemic numbers, in pre-2008, we landed up building houses all the way back to the late 1990s. We were at $110,000 of profitability, $130,000 in profitability per unit. We were at $150,000, $160,000. We got as high as $180,000, but we never profited in excess of $180,000 on each and every single build until 2021. And what happened was that commodities went up by 12%. Building materials went up by between 8 and 12%. But inflation of houses went up in excess of 27%. And so when that happened, the overall cost of the house went up based on supply and demand and the lack of inventory. Because during the pandemic, construction workers and a lot of construction work slowed down, housing also slowed down, driving up the prices even more based on supply and demand. And so the same exact houses that we were actually building back in 2018, 2019, that we were selling for $650,000 are now selling for an excess of over $800,000. Part of that does come with an inflated price on lumber and some of the other commodities, steel, concrete products, and finished trim items, but the vast majority of them have stabilized and are still the same. And in spite of the increase in commodities and other building materials, the overall cost to build a house, which may have cost us an extra $25,000 or $30,000, the house increased by over $100,000. So our profitability went up in excess of over $70,000 to $100,000 per unit in just profitability. Now, some people might sit back and go, well, that's selfish and greedy. I don't make the comps, I just follow them. And when I tell people, I say, look, when you go into an area, one of the most advantageous things you can do for you is follow comps. Most people sit back and go, I got a great piece of land, Jerome, I want to build on it. How do I build a house for profit? I want to make 6 figures. It doesn't matter where your land is unless it's in the right area. If you have a piece of land, there's a lot of land out here, ladies and gentlemen. There's that land everywhere. But if the land isn't supported by the comps of the dwellings that are there, you'll never get the profitability that you need. So you always have to go into a specific area. You never look for land, you look for a business model first. The business model has to show affluency. So anytime I go into any city across the United States, there's not an entire state that's broke and poor, guys. There's not an entire city that's broke and poor. Every single demographical city across the United States, we have overweight homeless people on the side of the roads, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody's starving in this country. So there's affluency in every single city across the United States. The question is, where is it? And have you penetrated that market to take advantage of it? And most times people say, I want to play it safe and build a less expensive home. Well, the second you do that, you cut yourself out of a more affluent area. So the problem with that is when you cut yourself out of a more affluent area, it also cuts down your bottom line of profitability. So I always tell people, you go into a more affluent area that's the upper middle class, not the ultra wealthy. There's very few of those folks. You go in where it's the upper middle class and there's affluency and there's money. There's no lack of affluency and no lack of money on this earth, ladies and gentlemen. There's only the lack of ambition and action takers. And so what I always tell people is you find an area with affluency, you build there. Find the affluency, then once you find the affluency, then look for land within that specific demographical area because that's where profits lie. You want to go and make in excess of $100,000 on each build, find the most affluent areas. You find the most affluent areas where are retirees, empty nesters, affluent professionals, doctors, lawyers, attorneys, scientists, and some of the higher earners are living. That's where profitability lies. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a ton of money to be made in construction and ground up real estate. But first, you have to understand where that profitability comes from and where it lies. And it all lies in the comps. You have to understand what banks are looking for. What banks are looking for in every single house, every single dwelling is, can we sell this? And is there supportive resale values that say, hey, if you default on this house, we can sell it for X amount of dollars. And if there's retail comps, the banks are not looking at you. They don't care about you. If you're broke, you're broke. Like if there's nothing in your bank account, what are the banks going to do? They're going to sue you for zero? If you have nothing to take, what do the banks want from you? I know a lot of people think that you are the ones that are really important. Let me tell you something, Mr. 800 credit score. Mr. 800 credit score, wake up. If you don't have an asset that supports its value, no matter how 800 your credit score is, or how much of a badass you think you are with your finances, no bank is going to finance that house for you. The house is going to be financed by the asset that secured itself. So Mr. 650 credit score, listen up. This is for the taking. You will do better in the market than an 800 credit score with somebody that goes in and actually has an area that supports the comps of what you're building. Because if the bank can affirm the overall value of that asset, the bank will lend based on the value of the asset, not your Mr. 800 credit score. Your Mr. 800 credit score is almost worthless when it comes to an asset if it doesn't appraise in a given area. The asset itself holds the security and the value to a lending institution more so than you do. Yes, they want to know you're going to pay them back and that you're going to write that check, but more so than that, they want to know if this asset protects their money under the instance that you default and do not pay that asset off. So ladies and gentlemen, make sure that when you go in, if you want to increase profits, it's all supply and demand. And you need to go into an area that supports affluency, go off of comps. And next time you're worried about inflation, understand that at least for the next decade, possibly two, you're going to have the opportunity to take advantage of the rising resale prices of homes. And people can call you dirty, nasty developer, whatever they want to call you. But the reality is you don't make the comps for the whole world. We'd only be so lucky to have that type of bandwidth. In your one little sector, in your one little backyard neighborhood, you go in and you take what's yours. If you don't, someone else will. I'll go in and take it for you.
So you target the upper middle class areas, a piece of land, say.
Yep.
And then you go in and you buy the piece of land with the bank's money.
You do.
And then you build based off the market.
Yeah, people try to take houses like this. What happens is people try to take a house that's like $800,000 and stuff in a neighborhood that houses are selling for $650,000. The price per square foot on these, they're selling for, $315 a square foot. Those other neighborhoods are selling for $265. But they're trying to get this to comp at $315 when everything else is comping for $265. You'll never get a $315 per square foot valuation on a house like this if it sits in the wrong neighborhood. It'd be the same fucking house. Doesn't matter. The house doesn't fucking matter. The comps are all that matters. Because that's what the banks can be able to resell it for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that click something in my head too.
Yeah. If you take this exact same home that's worth $315 a square foot in this neighborhood, and I did this in Phoenix. I was up in Cave Creek, Arizona. So back in like 2015, 16, 17, 18, I was building these exact same homes. And out here, at that time, these houses were selling for $265 a square foot. Out there, they were selling for in excess of $300 a square foot. I would take this exact same home, same floor plan, same everything, similar type of area in Cave Creek versus this area up here near Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I would sell the exact same home for $100,000 more. And I would the cost to build it was the exact same price in Arizona as it was in New Mexico. And I'd actually put an extra $100,000 of net profitability in my pocket just because I was building in Arizona versus New Mexico. And so it does have to do with demographical areas. And there just wasn't an area here locally that supported that type of resale number in that day and age. Now it's changed. It's evolved. The world's evolved. Back in those days, we didn't have a housing crisis where there was a lack of housing. It's been over a decade post-recession that created the housing crisis because there was a lack of houses that were being built, and we were in over a 4 million house deficit that wasn't built in a 10-year decade, and that crippled the market, crippled it. And so one of the biggest things, position yourself to take advantage of what happened, because this is still the aftermath and the results of what didn't get built because of the financial crisis and the recession in 2008. And so we're still living and picking up the pieces from 2008. Whether you believe it or not, that is the reality of what's actually is happening. Ladies and gentlemen, click subscribe, and Pound that thumbs up button for more content just like this to give you hacks, ideas, and information on exactly what we do to crush profits in real estate. Comment down below, let us answer your questions, and until next time, go out and compound your success.